In the desolate Arctic, a chilling wind lashed against Dr. Amelia Frost's face as she stood on the deck of the research icebreaker Aurora. For weeks, her team had been tracking an unusually large iceberg with a peculiar shape and trajectory. Yet nothing prepared them for the discovery that lay ahead. "Is that what I think it is?" Amelia gasped, her voice barely audible over the howling wind. Dr. Marcus Chen, a glaciologist with a penchant for the impossible, grabbed her binoculars and froze. His eyes widened as he adjusted the focus. "It's impossible," he whispered. Jutting from the ice was the unmistakable nose of a commercial airliner. Layers of ice clung to the fuselage, forming a ghostly shroud, while icicles hung from its wings like crystalline claws. "It's Flight 2317, Amelia breathed, her heart pounding. The disappearance of the flight in 1989 had baffled experts for 35 years. Carrying 207 passengers and crew, the plane had vanished without a trace during a routine trans-Arctic flight. Decades of search efforts had yielded nothing until now. As the Aurora navigated closer, Amelia's mind raced. How had the plane ended up entombed in ice? What had caused such a bizarre crash? And, most hauntingly, what secrets lay hidden inside? She called Sarah Nakamura, the team's ice specialist, to review the iceberg's composition. Sarah's findings were alarming. "This ice is unnatural," she said, frowning. "Its crystalline structure and density don't match anything we've seen before. It's almost like the plane was flash frozen." Dr. Chen added another layer of mystery. "The plane structure is intact, no impact damage, no stress fractures. It's as if it froze mid-air." Their findings defied science, and as the Aurora edged closer, a gunshot-like crack echoed across the ice. A large section of the iceberg splintered, sending part of the plane's tail plunging into the sea. The incident underscored the fragility of their discovery. Amelia gathered her team. "We need to get inside that plane," she said. The answers to the decades-old mystery lay within. But time was against them. The iceberg could break apart at any moment. Equipped with ice axes and thermal suits, the team climbed the treacherous iceberg toward the plane. Every step felt like venturing deeper into a chilling enigma. Reaching the plane's fuselage, the team confronted their first obstacle. The emergency exit, their planned entry point, was frozen shut. The ice encasing it was unlike anything they had encountered before, metallic and unnaturally dense. Amelia retrieved a thermal lance, a cutting-edge tool combining laser technology and heat, and began slicing through the ice. Hours passed as they worked tirelessly, the eerie quiet of the Arctic broken only by the hiss of the lance. Finally, with a resounding crack, the door gave way. Amelia braced herself and stepped inside, her headlamp illuminating the eerie interior. The sight before her made her gasp. Rows of passengers sat frozen in their seats, as if time had stopped the moment the plane vanished. Their expressions were etched with fear, their bodies eerily preserved, untouched by decay or frost damage. It was as if they had been flash-frozen mid-flight. This is impossible," Sarah whispered, her voice trembling. Dr. Chen, scanning the scene, echoed her sentiment. "No decomposition, no frostbite, this defies every natural law." Amelia pressed forward, her heart pounding. She needed to reach the cockpit, believing it might hold the answers to the mystery of Flight 2317. Each step felt heavier, as though the weight of the passenger's tragic fate bore down on her. Finally, she reached the cockpit door and hesitated. Summoning her courage, she pushed it open. Inside, the two pilots sat motionless, their hands still gripping the controls. Their faces, pale but unmarked by time, stared blankly ahead. For a moment, Amelia's breath caught as her mind played a cruel trick. She saw her father in the captain's seat. The vision blurred her focus, stirring up long-buried emotions. She staggered backward, gripping the doorframe to steady herself, forcing the illusion to fade. Meanwhile, Shen methodically searched the cabin. In a seat pocket, his hand brushed against a small object. Pulling it out, he discovered a USB drive, its casing yellowed with age but intact. "Amelia," he called, holding it up. "This could hold the answers." As the files loaded on Chen's tablet, a single video file stood out. Its timestamp suggested it was recorded during the flight's final moments. He played the video, and the cabin filled with the haunting sounds of panic. Passengers screamed as the plane lurched violently. A voice off camera, frantic and breathless, narrated the chaos. "The engines, they're failing. We're losing altitude." The camera turned toward the window, showing an engine sputtering before dying entirely. Outside, a blinding maelstrom of ice and snow obscured the view. A man with white hair appeared in the frame, shouting, "These engines are experimental. We're test subjects." The video cut off abruptly, leaving the team in stunned silence. The video's implications hung heavy in the air. Amelia stared at Chen's tablet, her mind racing to process the revelations. This wasn't a routine flight, it was a clandestine experiment. The passengers of Flight 2317 hadn't simply vanished, they had been unwitting participants in a horrifying test. Before the team could discuss further, a low rumble echoed through the fuselage. The ice beneath their feet groaned and shifted. "The iceberg's destabilizing," Sarah shouted, her voice filled with urgency. Amelia snapped into action. "We need to move. Now." The team scrambled toward the exit, slipping and sliding on the unstable surface as the groaning intensified. The once solid structure of the iceberg began to splinter. With each step, the risk of being swallowed by the icy abyss grew. Amelia clutched the USB drive tightly, knowing it was their only evidence of what had transpired. They barely made it to the ship as the iceberg began to break apart in earnest. The team leapt aboard, breathless and shaken, just as the massive structure started to collapse. From the safety of the Aurora, they watched as the plane, along with its frozen passengers, disappeared into the frigid depths of the Arctic Ocean. In the ship's conference room, the team sat in stunned silence. Maps, data, and satellite images lay scattered across the table, but all eyes were on the USB drive. "What do we do now?" Sarah finally asked, breaking the tension. Amelia's gaze hardened. "We tell the truth, all of it," she said, her voice resolute. "The world needs to know what happened to Flight 2317. Chen nodded but voiced his concern. "Whoever orchestrated this experiment has kept it hidden for decades. They won't let this come to light easily." Amelia leaned forward, determination etched on her face. "Then we fight back. We're scientists, we deal in facts and evidence. And now we have both." The Aurora turned south, leaving the shattered remains of the iceberg behind. Though they had set out to solve an aviation mystery, they had uncovered something far more sinister, a conspiracy that stretched beyond their understanding, threatening to shake the foundations of ethics in science and aviation. Amelia knew their journey was far from over. Powerful forces would try to silence them, but she was determined to honor the passengers of Flight 2317 and expose the truth, no matter the cost. As the Aurora sailed south, the gravity of their discovery weighed on the team. In the dim light of the ship's cabin, Amelia reviewed the USB drive's files with Chen and Sarah. The contents were damning personal photos and documents interspersed with technical schematics, experimental engine designs, and internal communications between the shadowy organization behind the experiment. The truth was clear. Flight 2317 had been used as a testing ground for unproven technology, and the consequences had been catastrophic. The video they had seen earlier was only part of the evidence. Among the files was a chilling memo outlining the experiment's objectives. It confirmed that the engines were experimental prototypes designed to operate in extreme conditions. The passengers had unknowingly boarded a flight destined to test these volatile systems. Amelia clenched her fists, anger surging as she read the callous language. Unexpected failures will be documented and analyzed. Human lives had been reduced to mere data points. The team worked tirelessly, piecing together the sequence of events from the fragmented evidence. Sarah compiled data on the unusual ice formation, which defied natural processes. It wasn't just the engines that were experimental, there were indications the plane had flown through a controlled atmospheric anomaly, possibly artificial in origin. The chilling possibility emerged that the passengers and crew were victims of deliberate sabotage to study the effects of extreme freezing on living beings. As they pieced together the puzzle, the danger of their mission became increasingly apparent. Chen voiced what they were all thinking. If this organization went to such lengths to cover this up for decades, they won't hesitate to come after us. Amelia nodded. "We need to act quickly. Once we dock, we secure this evidence and release it to the public. If we delay, we risk losing everything." Her voice was steady, but the weight of the decision was evident in her eyes. The team agreed, though a sense of unease lingered. They had unearthed a conspiracy that stretched beyond the Arctic, a truth that would rattle the aviation industry and expose the lengths to which some were willing to go in the name of progress. As the Aurora approached the safety of port, Amelia stood on the deck, the USB drive clutched in her hand. She gazed at the horizon, her thoughts with the passengers of Flight 2317. They had been silenced for decades, but now their voices would be heard. When the Aurora docked, Amelia and her team moved swiftly. They contacted trusted colleagues in the scientific and aviation communities, sharing the evidence they had recovered. The USB drive was encrypted and duplicated to ensure its contents could not be destroyed or lost. Amelia reached out to investigative journalists known for their commitment to exposing the truth. But their actions did not go unnoticed. Strange occurrences began to unfold: unmarked vehicles parked near the port, unknown callers demanding the evidence, and encrypted messages warning them to back off. The pressure mounted, but Amelia's resolve only hardened. "We've come too far to stop now," she told her team during a tense meeting. "The passengers of Flight 2317 deserve justice, and the world deserves to know the truth about these experiments." As the story broke in the media, the revelations sent shockwaves across the globe. The existence of experimental engines, the use of unwitting passengers as test subjects, and the catastrophic failure that led to the freezing of Flight 2317 ignited outrage. Aviation authorities faced mounting scrutiny, and governments were forced to investigate the shadowy organization behind the disaster. Amelia's team became both heroes and targets. While some praised their courage, others sought to discredit their findings. Powerful forces attempted to suppress the story, but the evidence was undeniable. The haunting video, the technical schematics, and the data from the ice all painted a chilling picture of negligence and greed. Amelia found herself reflecting on the enormity of what they had uncovered. She thought of the families of the passengers, who had waited decades for answers, and of her own father, whose dedication to aviation had inspired her. She vowed to see the fight through, no matter the cost. As investigations unfolded, more questions arose. What other experiments had been conducted in secret? How many lives had been sacrificed in the name of progress? The exposure of Flight 2317's tragedy was only the beginning of a larger reckoning. For Amelia, the journey was far from over. But as she stood with her team, their unity and determination unwavering, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. They had uncovered a truth that would change the world, and they would not let it be buried again.